Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the Dark Temple podcast with me, filmmaker Charlie Steeds. In 2019, I flew out to Nashville, Tennessee to shoot a movie of mine that I'd been dreaming of making for a couple of years, but never thought I'd get the chance to make on an indie scale. Death Ranch, my tribute to grindhouse and exploitation films, was an incredibly fun and somehow easy shoot. But on top of that, I was also finally getting to meet my friend and fellow filmmaker, Aaron Mirtes, who I'd been speaking to over the internet and video calls since 2017. Aaron is also a low-budget filmmaker. His feature films include Clowntergiest, and yes, you heard that title right, Clowntergiest, Curse of the Nun, American Hunt, The Alpha Test, and Oujia Craft. And like me, he's a guy in his 20s making films as a full-time career, and has found incredible commercial success with some of these movies. Aaron has a very well-informed and down-to-earth insight into the current world of straight-to-DVD movie making, movies that are often made to order at the request of distributors. And if you're an aspiring filmmaker, director, or producer listening to my podcast, this episode is loaded with useful information about the work people like me and Aaron do. Aaron's not a tourist who swings by to make one horror movie with his life savings or with an industry connection that got him the job. He's building a full-time directing, producing career from the ground up, from practically nothing. And I have a huge respect for anyone that can do that. And this is part of the reason me and him had a sort of instant connection and friendship. Making Death Ranch together was a blast. We got on like a burning cross on fire, and this was a really fun interview, reminding ourselves of the time we had on location. So I hope you listeners enjoy it too.
I think I'm the only person I know who makes horror films down here. I do know people that make Christian films, Lifetime films, but I'm kind of the only horror filmmaker. That's why I got to Skype all the way to London when I want to talk to a horror filmmaker.
Let's start by talking about your first horror feature film.
Yes.
And I really want to know as well, when it came to your first feature film, why did you choose horror in the first place? Like, were you already a fan of horror?
Yeah, I was a big fan of horror. So me and horror have a funky relationship at first. So I was terrified of it. I was absolutely terrified of it as a kid. Like, I was a nervous kid, and so they freaked me out, the idea of a horror movie. And when I was about 12 or 13, I was like, okay, if I'm going to make movies, I should watch all kinds of movies. I should broaden my horizons. And so I watched Psycho. I looked up best scary movies of all time, and I saw that Psycho was in black and white. So I thought there's no possible way that it could be scary if it's in black and white. Usually that's the case, but that was not the case with Psycho. Psycho was very scary. But what surprised me was that I loved the experience of being thrilled and being put on the edge of my seat, and I wanted to emulate that. Like, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to emulate the thrill of a horror movie. So I started watching more, anything I could get my hands on. I was really young, so it was a lot of the PG-13 stuff, like Cloverfield, 1408, kind of that wave of PG-13 horror movies that came out at the time, and then older stuff like Jurassic Park, Jaws, and things like that. So when I got out of high school, I went to film school for about a semester. And I'd been doing film since I was 8, and I'd been working professionally doing wedding videos and live TV and stuff like that. And then we had broadcast classes in our school, so we did stuff with the news and stuff like that. So by the time I was 18, I had plenty of experience in all kinds of things. I'd been making horror short films all the way through high school. So I film school, I'm thinking, man, I don't know how it is over there, but the student debt thing here is just crippling. So it was like $120,000 for film school.
Bloody hell.
So, yeah, one semester into film school, I bailed, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make a movie. I had seen on these, the straight-to-DVD market was still booming. It was not booming. It was kind of on its way out, but it was still alive, and so I thought maybe I could make some money there. So I didn't know that I wanted to do just horror, which I guess I still don't, but horror is still my main focus. When it came to making a movie, I thought, okay, I can make a horror movie. I could be passionate about it and excited about it and sell it. It was like the best of all worlds. And so that was what brought me to my clown movie.
How did someone who dropped out of film school go about getting the crew, getting the cast? I mean, where did you do it? How did you get the money?
Yeah, so there's a reason it took 3 years to make that movie, and it was because I had no idea what I was doing. I had, like I said, I had made plenty of DSLR short films, like you. I mean, you had made a bunch of short films as well.
Yeah.
And that is crucial, because then you at least know how to make the movie.
That's how you learn, yeah. I mean, for me, with my short films, it felt like I made 20 short films, and then the first feature was like a natural progression. It was just, It was the next short film. It just happened to be longer.
See, that's how it should be. And for some reason, I thought it would be wise to make a big jump up to the next level, like an idiot. So originally, when I started working on it, I was like, okay, I'm going to raise $7,000 by either doing work here and there, because I had done all kinds of freelance stuff, or I'll bug everybody that I've ever worked for, or I'll do a Kickstarter, or I'll bug my parents, or whatever. I was going to get $7,000, and then I was going to make a movie in the exact same way that I made my short films. And then I get a call from my friend who's in film school in Los Angeles, and he says, hey, you should come out and make your movie in Los Angeles and then use the gear that we have here at the film school. We could shoot on Alexa, we could shoot on Red, you can work with real actors and all that stuff. And for I debated it a lot. I'm thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to drown out there. But then I thought, well, if another great filmmaker had that opportunity when they were starting out, they would have taken it like an idiot. So I went like an idiot, and we spent way too much money. And I got the money by doing exactly what I said. I tried a Kickstarter. It failed. I bugged my parents. I bugged everybody I ever worked for. I ran up 2 credit cards, and I saved up money freelancing. And we spent like $30,000 over the course of 3 years. And then after that 3 years, I was paying off that credit card for another year. Yeah. And then when we went out there to Los Angeles, it was just a nightmare. I had to fire my AD. We had actors that were just a nightmare. They were divas and giving us issues. There were a lot of good actors. It was just there was more like a couple of specific thorns in our side. And then one of the sets got eaten up in a wildfire, so we had to cancel So we had to cancel the production about 2/3 of the way through. I came back home. I edit my footage, realize it's too short, write new scenes, go back out there a year and a half later, shoot the new scenes, shoot the missing old scenes, come back, and then to save time, I was like, no, we're not going to shoot any establishing shots or anything like that. So I came back to Nashville, shot a bunch of establishing shots, shot all that stuff. That was when High Octane called me and was like, hey, we want your movie. We're going to give you cash money for it. Yeah. I'm like, sweet. And it was actually a pretty good deal. It's harder to get an MG these days. You can still get them, very much so. But for a little movie like mine, you couldn't get an MG like you could back then. And you did a great thing where you had a clown movie right at the time on accident.
Yeah, by accident. Right at the time where all these different clown films started coming straight to DVD because of it.
Yep. Well, and that was why High Octane called.
Yeah.
They were like, "Hey, clowns are hot," and we did have a movie with decent production quality. We shot in Los Angeles. We shot in all these cool spots. We shot on Alexa. So, I mean, that did increase the value of the movie significantly.
I did the similar thing, but I did it intentionally where my first feature, Labyrinthia, was made at the same time Mad Max was coming out to try and cash in on the Mad Max stuff. Funnily enough, same thing. High Octane, who they weren't High Octane then. They were Empress Road Pictures.
Yeah, Empress Road.
But it was the same thing. They got in touch with me out of the blue. They're a sales agent, and they get in touch with you to pick up your film, and then they sell it to distributors. Did you have any idea how sales and the film markets and stuff worked? Because I didn't have a clue.
No, I had no clue. No clue. And so that way, when they renamed it Clowntergiest, and they gave me this crazy poster that did not have my clown on it, and all this stuff, I'm thinking, man, oh man, that sucks, doesn't it? And then all of a sudden we became a mockery. We're in the Hollywood Reporter, Entertainment Weekly. We got a lot of good press because of our stupid ass title. Yeah. And so they were right, and that was what killed me. I'm like, okay, they were right. And that was how I met you. Is you did my Clowntergeist trailer. Yeah. And so when I started doing trailers, I did the trailer for House of Violent Desire, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a cool movie. This guy seems cool. He did my Clowntergiest trailer, so he already knows I exist. I'll just call him up and just say hi.
Well, you jumped a part of the story there because I edited your Clowntergiest trailer and then you stole my trailer editing job.
Yes, I did.
And then you edited my House of Violent Desire trailer.
I did. You were off doing Winterskin.
That's right.
And the Barge People back to back. And so you couldn't keep up with the demand because High Octane was really growing as a distribution company and a sales agency. And so they had a bajillion trailers, and then they would drop them on you right before the market is what they would do. They'd be AFM is in 2 weeks. Here's 8 trailers, which no sane person could even keep up with.
With Clowntergiest, did you get either worried or disheartened at all by the fact that it was making you look like a rip-off filmmaker, and then with your next film, Curse of the Nun, again, it was like another rip-off type movie or a mockbuster. Did that like dishearten you at first?
It still disheartens me. It disheartens me all the time, especially because Curse of the Nun at its core, I think, is a cool movie. I was definitely learning and finding my footing, but I'm like, man, there's a cool movie here. And if there wasn't a mockbuster at the center of it, I think people could appreciate that. There are obviously some major issues in it that I just, that are my own fault. But nobody can see past the fact that it is a ripoff movie. And I don't blame them. I mean, who watches ripoff movies? It's the reason that I'm kind of, before this phone call, we were talking about that I'm kind of shifting directions a little bit, because it's like when you make a ripoff movie, it could be a brilliant movie, but it doesn't matter.
And it's not the filmmaker's fault necessarily. Like in the case of Clowntergiest, like you said, this was 3 years before.
Yeah. That was a total accident. Yeah. I had made it because I wanted to see a good clown horror movie because there weren't any.
Well, yeah, and then these sales agents are the people who twist your idea into then becoming a ripoff. I mean, my movie was called Werewolves, my werewolf movie, and they've renamed it A Werewolf in England, as a ripoff of American Werewolf in London. At least that's a rip-off of a movie that's like a classic from almost 40 years ago, and it's not like, something that's just coming out now. But my own idea, and I guess ego perception of myself as a filmmaker when I first made my first feature was that, these are my movies. This is my first feature. These are sacred things. This is your first outing into filmmaking, and you can only have your first one once, and you leave a trail of everything that you've made. So for it to become sort of mocked across the internet, mocked through the marketing, it may well make you money, but it is something kind of difficult as a filmmaker to sort of grapple with. If the world is mocking you right out of the gate, that's like yet another hurdle that you have to overcome.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, it's bad. I mean, there's like I said, there's a reason I'm thinking about just, I'm thinking about changing my name to, start over again and have that first again.
Because you've had some crazy people coming after you for your movies, haven't you?
Yeah, no, it's really hard. It really sucks because the thing is, I don't blame the sales agents for doing what they're doing at all. Not one bit, because they need to make their money.
And
they need to make their money back on the movie.
Who the hell wants to see your little low-budget movies anyway?
Bingo.
This is the hard pill to swallow, but it's an important lesson that nobody wants to see your shitty little horror movie. No matter how much you like horror movies, and no matter how much you think you're going to be a good filmmaker one day, nobody wants to see your shit. But they do want to buy clowns, even if it's by accident, because they think they're buying it, or they just want more of it, and werewolves and whatever, and that's how it is. Like, that's the harsh reality of it.
There needs to be something that sells the movie, no matter what it is. There needs to be something that sells it. Whether you yourself become a brand, or you work with an actor who is a brand, or you have a werewolf or a clown at the center of it that is essentially has a following, and it's essentially a character, You have to have something that is going to sell your movie and make its money back, because nobody wants to watch your shitty little horror movie.
We are just two kids that wanted to make movies. We had nothing.
Yeah.
We don't even have rich families willing to cough up, 100,000 for us to make our movies and, get us connected with all the people in showbiz. We are literally just two kids on our own. Going out there, and there's not that many of us around, really.
There isn't, and like I said, that's why it takes, calling somebody from a different country. It's like there really aren't many of us.
So we were talking about films needing to have a specific selling point and a monster and all that sort of stuff. Well, one film of mine that doesn't have any of that is The House of Violent Desire. So you ended up doing a trailer for it and watched it. Do you always get in touch with filmmakers who you edit the trailers for, or was there something?
Never. The only reason I got a hold of you is because I knew, well, first of all, it was different than any of the movies I had seen, right? Because I was doing trailers for these things that were marketable for an obvious reason, right? They were rip-off movies. They were this, that, the other. They found filmmakers like me who made a movie. They took it, twisted it to the marketplace, and then dumped it out.
Yeah.
And I do not blame them because these are bad movies. Like, you might think your movie is brilliant, but it's probably not. And I am no exception. My movies are not brilliant, especially, the further back you go, the less brilliant they are. But I watched The House of Violent Desire and I thought, this is a guy with a voice. This is a guy who meant to do this. And I recognized that you did Cannibal Farm for High Octane. And I figured I should just call this guy up, and we just hit it off right away because we were doing the same thing, both
working
making
for the
movies,
same company.
Working for the same company even, making movies, editing trailers, getting funding, and just trying to figure out. And I think when we met, you were working on Barge People and Winter Skin, and I was starting American Hunt.
You'd thrown out the offer to me, oh, you should come out to Tennessee and film.
Yeah.
And I have locations and, it'd be great to just like hang out and make movies together. And it was inevitable that we would do it at one point. And then when I saw your film, American Hunt...
You saw Hunt.
Yeah. When I saw American Hunt, I saw the barn, which is where we also then filmed Death Ranch later on. And it reminded me straight away of this old script that had been sitting around for a couple of years. Death Ranch, which was meant to be set in that sort of like, this part of America and in the sort of the barn. And I thought that could work for that movie. And it was a movie that I thought I'd never be able to make it on a sort of indie budget because I'd have to go all out to America. I'd have to find all the locations. Like this is an idea that was on the back burner for way in the future. Like I have, you probably have the same, like a little list of ideas. It's like, this is a great idea, but I'm not going to be able to make it.
It seems impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. So suddenly one of my impossible ideas seemed possible. And it just became kind of like, well, mainly down to you, it just became kind of like the easiest thing, You sent me all the videos of the set and the sort of walk-in tour of what we had access to, and you drew me maps and just all the instructions of how to get online and do the castings out there. And just through just online chat, we ended up planning out this whole movie. And then I came out to Tennessee for a month. We'd never met.
Yeah, we'd never met in person.
And I was coming to stay with you for a month. What was your feelings on it? I mean, it was like incredibly generous for you to offer all of that to this random filmmaker from England.
Yeah, I mean, I just, like I said, right away, I identified that we were so similar. And, I'm always really big on helping other filmmakers.
Same, yeah.
We got to stick together. It's such a tough gig, and everybody's going through a different story, and everybody's going through a different arc and try to find their way. And anything I can do to help, I like to help. And on top of that, making movies takes a long time. It really does. And you learn that, making a good movie takes a long time. And so getting to help somebody on theirs is a way to continue to sharpen your craft, have fun, hang out, be on set without actually having to make a movie yourself, know? Because I can't be on set as much as I want to be on set. I'd love to be, and it's fun. I like producing every now and again. It's nothing I would ever shift to full time, but it's something I want to continue doing. And so I'm like, okay, well, this guy, we're really similar. And, I don't know. I guess I just figured, fuck it. Why not? What do I have to lose? It sounds like fun. And so I just did it, just.
It was such a blast and such a memorable shoot.
It was.
Such a smooth and easy shoot. For me, at least.
Well, it was just physically exhausting. Nothing went wrong.
It was, it was definitely physically exhausting because it was hot and we only had 15 days to shoot the whole movie.
Yeah.
Which for me is really fast.
It's funny because that's the longest shoot I've ever had is 15 days. Death Ranch and the Alpha Test were both 15 days. Every day we were shooting some explosive scene,
Yeah.
And my poor neighbors, they had to witness all this KKK gore and the burning cross and all that stuff. I mean, it's funny. It's like, where do you even begin when you talk about making Death Ranch? Because there were so many things that were just crazy. The whole thing was crazy, is what it was.
You tell them, if they come in here, I'll blow their motherfucking heads off.
You might want to keep your distance. Shit. How many of them? 2. And they got guns.
Shut the fuck up.
Everything's gonna be okay, Gator. All I gotta do is talk to these miscreants. See if we can get you out of there alive.
I thought you looked after your neighbours quite well, though, because you went and dropped around little notes and then little gift cards. And
I did.
we never got disturbed.
No, we didn't.
There were 15 days for me to just sort of hang out and prep. And then there were 15 days to actually shoot the movie. And then there was like 1 or 2 days at the end. Because I was there for the whole month of, I think, April.
May.
I mean, I'd never been to Tennessee before. So it was nice for you to show me all of the sites.
I know. That was fun. You know what's funny? Here's a funny memory I have. So there's this, it's like so it sounds like you guys don't really have a lot of this in the UK. We have a lot of these like high-end fast food chains. So there's still fast food, but it's better than McDonald's, but worse than like a sit-down restaurant. And Dylan and I had one that we really liked called Culver's. And so I'm like, there's this hamburger restaurant. You got to try it. It's so good. And I took you to it. And it was a crowded day. And since everything's made by hand, on a crowded day, they'll fuck up your hamburger. And they fucked up our hamburgers. And you're sitting there like, this is a hamburger restaurant? This is no better than fast food. What the hell is this? Do you remember that? Every time I go there, for some reason, I think about, what kind of hamburger restaurant is this?
That hamburger was disgusting.
It was disgusting. They fucked it up pretty bad.
I don't even know if I ate the thing. But all it was
did.
Was a burger in a bun. There was nothing else in there. There was nothing to like help it go down. No sauce.
I know. They fucked it up because it's still delicious, and I'm probably gonna get it.
Before the shoot, we ate out at a restaurant
every night,
and lunch and dinner every single day.
Well, I wanted you to really get a sense of America. We'd go to Nashville and we'd look around. And
well, there was the one day where we got to drive down to Chattanooga.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's right. We went down to shoot God Country, which is a movie that our friend Luke was working on. Yeah,
because we were extras, weren't we, in the film?
We were. And we're in there for about a second. If that. I don't think I'm in it. I think you are.
What was that weird deli that we went to?
Colt Diner, the Yellow Deli. We got lunch there after the shoot, and it was run by a cult.
But it was amazing on the inside, wasn't it?
It was so good. It was like a treehouse. It was 3 or 4. It was so like they took a 2-story building and then divided each story in half. So it's 4 tiny stories, and it was like a treehouse where you'd go up through it. Everything was hand carved. There were tables on each like level, and we sat out on the deck. And everybody was wearing the same thing, and they were all like wide-eyed. They're like, "How can I help you?"
Yeah, it was like creepy cult, wasn't it?
They were like between a cult and a commune, you know.
Well, aside from the food, I mean, my favorite days and experiences shooting Death Ranch. I loved the day when the Cadillac showed up. The owners of basically on the morning I woke up, I thought this day where we need to drive around in a Cadillac, which always makes me nervous, having to go out into the open to make your movie, because anything could happen. You could get stopped or whatever. You just don't know. But on the day I woke up, when the Cadillac was coming, It was meant to be here like 10. I woke up at like
Oh yeah,
8.
I remember this.
And the Cadillac, they'd emailed me saying they can't bring the Cadillac until I've got insurance. Like they suddenly sprung upon me that they wanted a certain type of insurance that I had to pay for. So I had to like quickly get the insurance, and then finally it showed up. And then we had the best shoot day with the Cadillac. And that's part of what I loved about shooting in Tennessee is like we just went out in the Cadillac and drove around and got all these stunning shots. In England, I don't think you could do that. I think if you were in really rural England, you could get away with it, but you just get stopped. Like you just get stopped almost immediately, and pulled over and told that you're not allowed to do it. And also the scenery. Well, this is from my opinion, but the scenery wouldn't be anywhere near as pretty. But
no, it's beautiful out here. I mean, the American South is a funny thing because it's largely untouched. You know, as you saw on our drive to Chattanooga, it's like you've got a city here. You know, you've got Nashville, and then outside of Nashville, it's a bunch of smaller suburban towns, and then outside of those are like little more. It just gets more and more rural, and then you're in the middle of nowhere. And we were like right on the edge of a smaller town. But yeah, we did. We took the Cadillac. We took my car. We took Ashley's car, popped the trunk. You were on one camera. I was on one camera. Travis drove the Cadillac behind us, and we just drove down those back roads and got a bunch of shots, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah,
and the other memory that the other day I really enjoyed was we really needed to use an old payphone, like a phone booth.
Oh, that's one of my favorite memories too.
It was one of my favorite little moments of filming, just because it came together so easy.
It was so easy.
It had been a stress from day one, like because obviously before I came out there, I had to run by you some specific things that I was gonna need. One of them was the Cadillac, so I knew that this film had to have this Cadillac in it, and you know, I think it was you guys who must have got me in touch with the Cadillac guy, you know, so that I could find it. But another one that I really needed was I needed the phone booth, the payphone.
Yeah, payphone.
And we couldn't, you know, you'd sourced a few, but they were like miles away. And
payphones are all but gone.
I was scouring eBay, thinking of actually buying a full-blown payphone to get delivered. It was going to be like $300, and it would have been delivered, and we would have just stuck it in the ground. And then, lo and behold, the place where we were driving past every single day.
Yeah, the little rural gas station that's been there for over 100 years.
Which is like 2 minutes down the street.
Literally 2 minutes from the house. And
who was it who turned around and said, hang on a minute.
I did. I was like, there's a payphone right there. And it didn't work, but it didn't have to work. And that was why it didn't show up on any maps or anything, was because it was an out-of-commission payphone.
So we just set out one day, didn't we?
We just pulled up, and I said, you know, there are a bunch of people inside. I bet you if you just went and asked, can we shoot a video of this payphone for something we're working on, she'd say yes.
Yeah.
And so you went in there, and I remember what she said. Do you remember what she said?
I probably can remember, because I went in and I just thought, I need to use my British charm. So I just said, like, I'm over from London, and I want to, you know, just take a short video of your payphone. What did she say?
She said, I don't see why not.
And then we just went out there.
And we just went out there and shot the payphone.
And just shot the scene of DeAndre in prison overalls, topless and sweaty, running out of the bushes, making a phone call.
Yeah.
Which was, for me, was like just a really important image to start the film off with. So I really wanted it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it sets everything up really well. It was perfect too, because that payphone, there were woods right behind that gas station, so he could just come out of those woods to the payphone.
Yeah, it was just perfect.
It was perfect.
The whole shoot was a shoot where perfect things just happened. You know, like some films.
Yeah.
You know this probably. Some films, they just don't want to be made, and they're a total bitch, and every little thing that should just be easy is so difficult.
Ends up being a nightmare.
But this was a film where, like magic, it wanted to happen, and it made itself.
Yeah.
There was no effort required in some sort of a way.
Yeah, well, all the actors were really on board, you know. I think that was a big thing. The actors and the crew.
I was definitely lucky because I had such an amazing team of people. You know, I've never made a film that wasn't just, it all just fell on my head, you know, like it's all on my back to pull it all off. But you guys were helping me, and the actors were amazing and very professional and all knew exactly what they were doing. And also, I have to say, like, and maybe you feel the same. Like, I'd never made a film with another filmmaker. Like, I'd never collaborated.
Yeah, I hadn't either.
And sort of let go of so much stuff and just trusted you because, you know, you shot on your camera, I shot on my camera. The film is 50-50.
Yeah, it really is. I can't tell what's yours and what's mine. You know. Yeah,
it's 50-50. Just the two of us going at it. And just, you know, making the movie together as a collaboration. So I learned a lot from...
I learned a lot from you. I mean, we both, I think, picked up a lot because we're different in a lot of ways in how we make our movies and how we approach things, as any two filmmakers are. And so I think we both learned just a lot. It was just really an educational experience. We had a lot of fun and we worked well together, which was great. But yeah, it's crazy when I watch that movie. I cannot tell what's yours and what's mine, you know.
Yeah. Well, when I came back, I definitely wrote down a few things that I'd learnt from you, like from watching you doing stuff as well. But it would be great to have them, but I can't even remember what these things were. But the
biggest thing I learned from you really was the importance, first of all, the importance of, I guess, building things and just like making things real. The importance of making things real on camera, not cheating something. If you need to hang a Klans member, the best thing you can do is hang a Klans member. Don't cheat it. Don't, you know, get a mannequin, dress it up, hang it from the barn. And I would always try and cheat around the more difficult things. But it's like, no, like just do it. And you're so... You know, my opinion on practical effects changed completely. Like, I was always pro practical effects, and I thought they were the way to go, but I would use a lot of CGI. And then I was, after Death Ranch, I was like, okay, you can do so much more in camera than I ever thought you could. And then I did Oujia Craft that September, where it was a lot of witch effects, a lot of CGI. And I was thinking, and I did that, and I'm like, okay, from here on out, it's like minimal CGI. Because just between, I did Death Ranch, which was all practical, and then I did Oujia Craft, which was heavy amounts of CGI, at least for an independent movie, you know. And it was like, okay, you know, you, like we did on Death Ranch, you can pull it off in camera. You just have to do the work. You have to build it, you know. If it's a trapdoor, for example, we built that trapdoor, stuck it in the ground. You know, you can cheat certain things, but I don't know. I was just amazed at how we didn't cheat anything. We did everything in camera.
Yeah, in fact, I remember a lot of instances where I would be like, you know, I would be wandering off through the woods full of, you know, bugs and spiders and webs and all sorts of nastiness, finding my little spot where I wanted to film, and you'd be like, you can't go there. Yeah. You can't get down in that horrible ditch. Yeah. And I'm like, I can, Aaron, and I'm getting down there with my camera.
I know.
So you would have naturally picked somewhere not so messy.
Yeah, easy. It's because I'm always babying the actors, you know? I'm always babying the actors and myself. Yeah, and that's what I think I realized as I was babying myself more than I wanted to admit. But the big thing is my main and only consideration ever is story and the actors. And so I just figured, just shoot it wherever, cheat it, like it's fine, as long as the story and the acting comes across. But on Death Ranch, I learned, you know, there's a really important element that I was missing, and that was actually doing everything on camera so people can see what's happening. That goes a long way. So it, you know, it was like, your actors are going to be fine, you know, just warn them, this is going to be tough. And then just do it, you know, as long as they're safe, it's fine, you know. And I think that was the big piece that was missing for me, like, which, I mean, is my strength. The performances in my movies are usually one of the stronger aspects, and same with the story. But I was just, like I said, amazed at the extent of what you got on camera. Another good example was The Cross. I'm thinking, You can't burn a 30-foot cross. But we did.
Well, just about. We had
a lot of issues. That was the day I got like really heat sick. I had to like.
Well, yeah. You were up on the ladder spraying out of a pressure
diesel.
pump.
Yeah.
Diesel.
Oh my gosh.
Which was, I mean, I've got some.
The fire and the
somewhere.
diesel made me so sick. I had to go up and take a shower, and like I was gonna puke. I didn't though, and I just cleaned up, and I was like, I need air. I feel like shit.
Well, I've got some amazing behind the scenes shots of you like spraying the burning cross with the hose. Like you look yourself like you're about to get set on fire.
Oh, I know. I was so pissed with that thing. I was right in there. Well, because we had spent. Because you had told my dad who was helping us with it, you were like, I want the biggest cross that you can muster. And I'm like, You're talking to the king of big builds. My dad loves the bigger the better. So he gets us this like 30-foot tall log, these 2 logs, and he puts bolts in there, and he's like, all you got to do is tighten these things. So we are out there in the heat pulling this wrench as hard as we can. We could barely get this thing tightened.
Oh, and it was so hot as well.
Oh, I know.
Like
well, and the funny thing is, it was like the opposite of the situation before, where it was like you were just saying you would go out in the bug in the heat and be like, let's shoot here. I'd be like, you can't shoot here. Meanwhile, I'm putting this cross together, and you're just kind of watching me, and you're like, well, that doesn't look much fun. I'm like, help me with this cross. And you're like, no, I think I'll just go take care of this, that, or the other. So you're going taking care of the actors. I'm trying to get this cross together. And I finally managed to get the 2 pieces of the cross together. My dad had cut, a curve in one of them, in both of them, so that way they'd fit together. What I didn't think about was getting it into the ground,
Neither did I.
Yeah, we had dug a hole that was deep enough. I just figured, we'll just tip it into the hole. My dad thought, you'll probably need to hook it up to a cable and then take the tractor and pull it into the hole. Well, we get all the actors there, and you were off doing something else. Like I just told you, we're going to get the cross on the ground. Don't worry about it. And it was the heaviest thing I've ever felt in my life. The thing had to be 1,500 pounds. No, more like 1,000 pounds. But it was at least 1,000 pounds. But there was like, it was like that image in World War II of everybody with the flag. Like there's like 6 of us pushing one side and a bunch of people with a rope pulling the other. And we got it in there. It took us a minute, and we probably shouldn't have done it, but we got it in there. And then it had been soaking in diesel all day, but apparently that wasn't enough because the wood was still wet from the rain.
The bloody thing didn't light.
Oh my gosh, it didn't light. And then the cross started to burn, and the arm part of the cross started tilting. So now we have this wonky cross. But so then we just put a bunch of brush at the bottom and started a fire for the light. I mean, it looks insidious and scary, and it worked. But that was really the only major thing that didn't come out like we thought.
You're right, because it worked, but it wasn't the amazing burning cross we were quite anticipating. But it did work. But
it did work.
When we when I realized, how the hell are we going to get this cross in the ground? I remember just thinking to myself, I have no idea how this cross is going to stand up. And I remember just saying, Aaron, you get the cross in the ground. I'll go and shoot this scene. And I just left, and I thought, just please, by the time I come back, let's just pray that I come back and the cross is in the bloody ground. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't care how they're going to do it. And then when I came back, it was standing upright. I was amazed. But in terms of like, I'm thinking what I learned from you on the shoot, but it's kind of exactly what you just said. You were saying that you care so much about the actors that you wouldn't want to shove them in the dirt, whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, let's do it. Let's get them in the dirt. Let's make them dirty. Let's not cheat it. Let's do it for real. But funnily enough, that's kind of something you learned from me, but it's also something I learned from you, because I think everything was a little bit more sort of the way you do things out there. It was more relaxed. It was more, you're taking care of yourself as well. You know, we're going out, we're finishing filming and going out and having dinner at a restaurant. Like something, when I go away for like a 22-day shoot, when it gets to the end, I'm so desperate just for even a McDonald's. I just want to
Yeah.
see food that exists that wasn't made in my kitchen in 5 minutes. You know,
Yeah.
like, so the fact that I could shoot the fuck pit in the day and be out dining at, sports bar or whatever in the evening with the cast, that was something that it was like learning to look after yourself and treat yourself.
Yeah.
A little
And that's
better.
kind of what I think I arrived at, is that the answer was somewhere in the middle of what you were doing and what I was doing.
Yeah.
Because you need to get it on camera. You can't baby everybody, but you need to take care of them. And you always talk about how smooth it went, and I think like it only went so smooth because I was constantly checking up on those actors and making sure they were okay. And I took them out to dinner on my own dime several times, and it was like that was why there was no mutiny. You know, 'cause there were several people that were like pissed off. They're like, "We're getting this sandwich for lunch," and I'm like, "Yeah, but afterward we're getting Chick-fil-A, I guess." And they're like, "Oh, good," you know. Dylan and I still joke about Death Ranch sandwiches, which are a lot of bread, one piece of meat, one piece of cheese. Death Ranch sandwich.
That's
Or
not
no,
just
there was like lettuce and mayonnaise, I think.
That's not just a Death Ranch sandwich. That's all Dark Temple Productions
Ugh.
have this same sandwich.
See, it's funny because that's still where we're different. Is because I'll spend like, oh gosh, I mean for a 15-day shoot, I would spend $1,500 on food, right? And you're like $1,500, more like $150. I'm like, what? But I get like I either get catering, get home cooking from my mom, or get restaurant food, or I take everybody out. Like I'm so anal about. I think it's just because I had so many on Clowntergiest in LA. So this is in California. Everyone is very entitled. It's not a stereotype. Everyone feels like they're owed something, and because it's such a without getting too into it, it's such a liberal state, and the taxes are so high, and the government handouts are really high, which means everybody feels entitled to your money, which means the production needs to cover everything. So like in Death Ranch, how everyone just drove to work in the morning, you couldn't do that in California. You would need to pay them for gas, you would need to pay them for car maintenance. No one would do you any favors. It's like, well, if you we had people trying to charge us when they used their own clothes. They're like, well, I'm wearing my own clothes for the movie, so I'm going to charge you, you know. And so I think after that, I was like, oh my God, these actors are like made of glass. You know, we need to take care of them. And then I came back to Tennessee and saw that wasn't the case. And so I thought, these actors, and in Tennessee, as you saw, they're so not demanding. Everybody was so laid back and so not demanding, especially our cast in Death Ranch. I mean, you could have shoved them into the dirt and not taken care of them, and it would have been fine because they were dedicated. You know?
Yes, they were.
But I think just I was so scarred from Clowntergiest. That's why I am the way I am with that stuff.
Well, the whole of Death Ranch was a film with a small budget and really depended massively on favors. Yeah. Not only from you and your parents and the crew and the cast. It was that type of a movie, but it was so nice that just everything was organized mainly by you in a way where people came along and they had respect for the project, and we were all on the same page and willing to.
I think that was both of us. I think that was you and I together, because you brought the you know, because really we collaborated on the shoot, and we collaborated as any producer would on how to get your vision on screen. You know, so it was your script and your vision, and people really respected that, and I was there to make sure that happened. And that came together. And so that was where you and me worked together so well, is our strengths complemented each other, you know? Yeah. And in the end, I think that's why it came out to be such a smooth production and such a good movie at the same time. Because I've had smooth productions that didn't turn out to be good movies, and vice versa, you know? Yeah. The smoothness of the production usually doesn't have any bearing on the quality of the movie. And so to get both was really exciting.
A question I have for you about what has a bearing on the quality and smoothness of a movie is budget, because Death Ranch was a low budget movie. We've both made stuff on really low budgets.
Really low, yeah.
But we also you before me, because you had Clowntergiest, but which is a hell of a lot more expensive than my first feature.
Yeah.
My question is, like, do you think there is a benefit to throwing big money at stuff? Spending tens of thousands on things. Does that make the film better and smoother, or have you learnt over time that doesn't matter so much?
It doesn't matter.
You say is...
I've learned that it doesn't matter. So Guillermo del Toro said something. The director's job is to make your budget invisible and work with what you have. So if you have $10,000 and nothing to work with, your job is to make it look like you had everything in the world that you needed. Another quote I think about is actually Seth Rogen. He said, budget is a creative decision. And it is.
Yeah.
So when you have, and that is another issue I take with these, studios, is they give you 10 grand and they're like, I want a killer robot movie. I'm like, you're not going to get a killer robot movie for $10,000. They're like, sure, I will. Just buy some mask and throw somebody in it and then boom. And it's like, okay, well, technically you have a killer robot movie, but it's not like very good. And that is where there's a big disconnect, I think, between a lot of filmmakers and a lot of studios, is they want more than what they're willing to pay for, which is another reason why I'm looking to shift to self-funded and fully independent, is because you can make a movie for whatever. And I learned that particularly on American Hunt. We had $4,000 to make that movie, which would be like £2,000 to £3,000. And everyone was working for free. We shot it in 9 days, but we were all focused. It was like Death Ranch, where we were all focused, all there, all ready to go. We had major production issues. It was one of those things where everything kept going wrong, just coincidences. But I learned on that movie, because it came out really, really well, for the most part, and it was because we had everything we needed. It's a really simple movie, and it got the best reviews that I had gotten, because we had what we needed. It was a $4,000 movie, but it's literally people in the woods with fake guns shooting at each other. And the whole movie is built around that, and it's built around the characters and the story, which is always free. And so it's like, okay, now we still overreached a couple of times, but in the future, I'm like, okay, and we've both learned this the hard way, only write what you can pull off. I mean, go ahead and write whatever you want, but when it comes to like getting it in pre-production, it's like, okay, ask yourself, what can I actually pull off? Which is also something I learned on Death Ranch. I learned truly what pulling it off means. Not faking it, not cheating it. It's like, there is a movie that you can pull off beautifully. I think about like Shane Carruth's movie, Primer and Upstream Color. He made those movies. I mean, Primer was $7,000, but everything in the script, it's like, you only need about $7,000 to do it. And so budget is a creative decision. The more money you have, the more explosive and cool stuff you can do, the bigger, the badder. And there is a limit to what you can do on a small budget. But a big budget doesn't mean a better movie. It just gives you more tools to make a better movie. And the smaller budget you have, the more experience that it takes and the more mastery that it takes to make a good movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that certain films require certain budgets.
They do.
Like Death Ranch is a film that there's nothing more I would have wanted to put in it, really. It's a low budget film, and it has everything it needs. And it's the same you were saying about your film American Hunt. I agree that in your films, that was probably the first one where I think everything you needed appeared to be there.
Yeah.
And even though the budget of Clowntergiest was so much higher, somehow I think this is an important lesson for some low-budget filmmakers to learn. Anyone out there trying to do it indie, is that people obsess over budget, reviewers obsess over budget, the filmmakers obsess over budget. It's irrelevant. Because Death Ranch was a film that is way lower budget than the films that I was making just before and the films that I'm making after and now, yet is possibly my favorite of my movies. It's definitely the smoothest shoot.
And another funny thing about Death Ranch too that people obsess over, not on Death Ranch but in general, is cameras. People obsess over what camera did you use and this, that, the other. We used two old Blackmagic cinema cameras. Both were like 5 years old, and we just kind of went for it. Like, it doesn't matter what you're shooting. on, it's how you're shooting it.
Exactly. And my camera, I bought it off eBay.
Same.
It was like $600, $700 pounds.
Mm-hmm. Same with mine. Mine was also used. So ours were both used old bargain cameras that we had for many years.
Secondhand Blackmagic cameras. Yeah, I mean, I would not have dared to shoot on a Blackmagic camera something like an English Haunting. You know, I was kind of stuck standing by the Red Dragon or whatever we were filming with, shooting in 6K or whatever. But for Death Ranch, it was kind of freeing to be able to. I wanted it to look rough and grainy and dirty and gritty and handheld. So it was like, let's get 2 little Blackmagics and we'll just go out and do this.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of like just experiment, you know.
Yeah.
I know you're as a filmmaker, you're a fan of just going out there and experimenting and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I am.
Who are some of your influences in terms of like directors, films that, you know, inspire you?
So in terms of it's funny, in terms of directors and in terms of creativity, I have like 2 different sets of influences. So what I mean by that is, for example, I am obsessed with Steven Soderbergh. His movies are good, but I could take or leave a lot of them. I'm not into spy movies or some of the political dramas he does. You know, I like a lot of his movies. I love a few of them. But I'm really interested in how he directs, how he makes movies. I'm interested in how minimal it is. I'm interested in how, you know, kind of sparse it is and how prolific he is, and I look to him for a lot of guidance. Same with people like Robert Rodriguez. You know, I like Robert Rodriguez's movies, but it's like creatively I'm on a different wavelength. But I love how he does it all himself. I love how you know, he's constantly thinking, how can I keep this independent? So directors like that I just obsess over. I'm really interested in people who take things into their own hands and make good work. Because I think that's the future. You know, the market is becoming flooded. Budgets are getting harder to get. And it's like, I think the future of filmmaking and of independent filmmaking is the filmmaker who knows how to do it all themselves. Because these days you can, you know. And it takes a lot of practice and it takes multiple movies. But then you end up in a scenario where you control your vision from top to bottom. And the movie that you want actually comes out. And there's not some studio shitting all over your work or marketing it funky or whatever. So I'm really interested in directors like Robert Rodriguez and Steven Soderbergh who kind of take control of those things. More recently, too, the Safdie brothers have shown up on the scene, making Good Time and Uncut Gems. Really interested in what they are doing. They shoot a lot on the street. They shoot a lot without permits. They just kind of run and gun a lot of things. I'm really interested in kind of capturing raw stuff. You know, like really focusing on the story and actors and focusing on getting that. Though now, you know, what's funny is ever since Death Ranch, I've been obsessed with getting it all in camera and getting it all there because I saw that we could do it. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So now it's like, imagine you have some crazy story and you actually pull it all off and then you actually get it all on camera and you don't cheat anything, you know?
I rewatched recently Magic Mike.
Ooh, Magic Mike. Soderbergh.
When I first watched it, I watched it when it first came out and I didn't think much of it. I thought it was kind of shoddy, actually. Yeah. Like the way it was made, I thought it was a bit crap. I didn't get it, basically. But this time I watched it, it was earlier this year, I fully got it and I loved it.
It's really different. I think a lot of people expected something really different because of the marketing.
Yeah, it was an expectation thing, you're right. But the style you're talking about, this like really stripped down, bare bones shooting style where it really just focuses on the characters and the story, I think Magic Mike is actually a really amazing example of that. Because I think the shots, if those shots were in a movie by you or me, people on the internet would, you know, they would come for us.
Yeah, they would.
That the cinematography is so shit, you know.
Yeah.
They would properly come for us and say that we were amateur.
Yeah. You know what I've learned is that people know nothing about cinematography because I'll see movies that look like shit and people are like, it's beautiful. And then I'll turn around on my own movies and then there will people be like, look, the camera and sound were fine, but the story wasn't. I'm like, what are you talking about? The camera and sound sucked. Like, I'm not happy with it. Why are you happy with it? It's really strange.
People, there's no other profession, is there, really, that I can think of, apart from sort of being an artist, I guess, where you do your work, you do your day job, which is making movies, and then the whole world feels like they're entitled to come and like state their opinion.
I know, like maybe a
They're not
football player or a
experts.
politician. like it's a very weird exclusive club. But what's weird is we have websites devoted to reviewing our work, like giving it a star rating. Like what the hell is that about? You kind of just
It's a strange thing.
It is a strange thing. You know, I've learned to totally let that go. You know, you got to.
I ignore it. I ignore all the bad stuff. I ignore all the good stuff. I don't care anymore.
You got to ignore it altogether. Sometimes I'll peek through it though, and I'll look for valid points. Because sometimes I'll read something and I'll be like, you know what, they're right. But it's rarer and rarer these days because most of the time you already know what's wrong with your movie.
That's what I always find. I know what's wrong with the movie. I don't need all you people to tell me.
Yeah.
You know, I know what's wrong and I know what's right. And I know they say, obviously, you got a biased opinion because you made the thing. But I disagree. I know what is wrong and right.
I think about that a lot when people are like, I hated your movie. I'm like, well, you don't hate it more than I do.
Yeah, we have to see this 100 times.
I don't know. It's like being the parent of a serial killer or something like that. It's this weird relationship where I'm like, it's a bad movie, but I still love it.
If my listeners were to go and watch just one of your films, which one should they go and watch and why that one?
Okay. My best movie is American Hunt because I had what I needed. But my best script is The Alpha Test. But we did not have what we needed, and you can tell. But that's actually probably like my best story. Oujia Craft
I feel like
is the most
I prefer
accessible.
the Alpha Test.
A lot of people prefer. I prefer the Alpha Test. It's just the thing about the Alpha
I
Test
think,
is that we didn't have what we needed. You know, but the Alpha Test is my personal favorite. American Hunt is the best overall, and everybody's favorite is Oujia Craft because it's a big CGI-filled witch movie and it's a lot of fun. And that Oujia Craft really changed my perspective too, though, because I thought, I want to do fantasy and science fiction. And after doing a fantasy movie, I'm like, boring. I need more death. I need more blood. I need more intensity. You know, because as much as I love stripped down and simple and characters and story, it's like I also love blood and guts, and I love movies like House of the Devil. You gotta earn your blood and guts, unless it's a splatter movie like Death Ranch, which I also love because I'm developing a splatter movie right now. I've always wanted to do an over-the-top splatter movie, but all that to say, if you like mainstream shit, Oujia Craft. If you want to see my favorite, Alpha Test. But the best in show usually goes to American Hunt.
That's a sneaky little answer.
That's a sneaky answer.
That's a trilogy that
you've trilogy right
told
there.
people to go and
all
get
right,
there.
if I had to say one, it would probably be the
it's
Alpha
fine.
Test.
They can go and get the trilogy.
Go get the trilogy. I mean, they're all free on Tubi anyway.
Cool. I asked you as well, like I ask everyone on my podcast, to pick a film to discuss that influenced you.
Okay. I'm going to go with 1408. And the reason I'm going to go with 1408 is because there are obvious, like, everybody loves Jaws. Everybody loves Alien. Everybody loves, like, it's no secret that these movies are good, right?
We're sick of hearing about those movies.
Yeah, everybody knows they're genius. But 1408 is a movie I have seen over and over and over. I rewatched pieces of it. Brad was showing his girlfriend, and I've seen it 1,000 times, so I was watching some of my favorite scenes. And it's like, this movie does not get the respect it deserves. And it had a huge influence on me. When I talk about minimal storytelling and I talk about locking characters in places and, focusing on that, that's 1408. But it's still insane and it's still intense. Because normally when you think character-driven movie, you think like, oh, shitty French movie, ahoy, like... Here it comes, some boring shit movie where nothing happens. Or elevated horror, whatever the fuck that means. Where it's these brainy horror movies where it's scary if you think about it, which pisses me off. I'm like, it's either scary and cool or it's not. It's either bloody and exciting or it's not. Your story is either interesting and you know what the fuck is going on or not. And it pisses me off because I'll watch all these A24 movies. I'm like, nothing happened in that movie. Nothing happened in that movie. You know, you need to be a fucking genius to pull that shit off, like The Lighthouse or The Witch, you know, because that is genius, and he took his time, and there's just details every time you watch it. But the majority of these movies, I'm like, what the fuck are you? Who do you think you are? You know? And so when I go back and I watch 1408, I'm like, this is exciting. It's minimal. It's interesting. It's unique. It's experimental. And nobody cares, and it makes me sad because everybody likes that movie, but nobody's really gone back and appreciated it. And so, I think every filmmaker, I always say that every filmmaker gets a couple of movies that they can go out and preach the good news about, you know, because there are a lot of movies that weren't particularly popular until Quentin Tarantino talked about them or until Steven Spielberg talked about them, you know. Yeah. And so I'm on the let's get 1408 the recognition it deserves train.
Well, I remember, I mean, I'm a huge Stephen King fan. Yeah. That's what got me into horror, and I guess then into filmmaking and making horror movies. But I remember when the trailer for 1408 came out, that was like at the peak when I was so intrigued by Stephen King. But then I had to wait like a year, it felt like ages until the film finally came out, because I couldn't see it in the cinema because I was too young. So I got it on DVD. So it was like a year, maybe even longer than that, until I finally got to see it. And it is a really good film. Yeah. But the other films you mentioned, like, because I mean, we mentioned in passing Alien and Jaws. Yeah. You're right, because they also, especially Alien, is the same thing. It's just a spaceship. Yeah. It's so simple. It's just it's a few rooms in the spaceship, and
the second half of Jaws is just a boat.
Exactly, and then 1408 is just one room. But it definitely pays well for people like us with not a huge amount of money to make movies, to be a fan of that contained set storyline, which I think personally it's the best way. I mean, if you think of all the great horror films, or not all of them, but a lot of them, like The Shining or something, it is confined to the hotel.
Well, it's why of all your movies, Winter Skin is my favorite. You know, it's because
that's properly confined.
Well, and it's so nightmarish. Almost. Like David is stuck with this crazy lady, and you're like, oh shit, man. And it just felt like the Misery movie we never got, because I love the book Misery, and the movie was good and all, but Winter Skin to me felt like this just different version, different take on the whole genre of, you know, chamber thrillers. And I don't know, it's super cool. I mean, it's the same reason why I liked An English Haunting, you know. Yeah. But I mean, even Death Ranch, it's like The Barn.
It's all set at the ranch.
It's all set at the ranch.
For me as a writer, I don't like stories. I don't gravitate to stories that are messy and go all over the place. All of my films are set in one place. Yeah. Pretty much. And if they ever went other places, it was kind of by accident. Well, you know, but they're all basically one place.
You know what's funny is, so you're talking about, I don't like stories that go all over the place. My movies, there was a critic who said, I've seen all of Aaron's movies, and all of his movies chase their own tail. And I was like, yeah, they do. And I like that, so shut up. And he had put it into words. I was like, yeah, they do. I like that. And that's another thing that 1408 does.
Your movies do go all over the place.
They do, because it's always like...
You've never done contained.
Well, you're right. I have not. I haven't. It's because I've always been forced to not. It's always like, okay, we need this many locations, this many monsters, blah, blah, blah. The story is always usually very much focused on one person who gets tossed around. And I think what I would encourage people is, it's the same thing with every other indie filmmaker, myself included. It's like, just please, for our sake, we're learning. And I know this is too much to ask of an audience, but just like, bear with us. There's a lot of good stuff in these movies. There's a lot to love here. But
well, the thing is, people over all of the history of cinema have been forgiving of movies, but now people expect technology's gone so far, people expect everything to be pristine.
Oh, I know.
If you released Evil Dead now, if you even released Jaws now, or Alien now, I do think that people would go, oh, that shark looks a load of shit. Yeah. Oh, that alien was just a man in a suit, or that alien only came in the last 10 minutes, you never really got to see him. You know, this is an Evil Dead. People wouldn't even watch
Oh,
it.
I
They'd
know.
say it was shot on your mobile phone or whatever.
Yeah.
But people need to remember that well, in fact, they don't need to remember it. We as the filmmakers need to remember to ignore what these idiots say and think.
We need to, because obviously the best you can do is the best you can do, and you're going to get better every time, and you're going to continue to push yourself to learn, and you can't ignore the bad things about your movies and just say, get over it. You want to get better. But at the same time, it's like the only way an audience is going to enjoy this stuff is if they, there's so much out there to love, because I've learned that myself, because I've been watching more and more smaller and smaller stuff to learn, but I've ended up enjoying a lot of it. And it's like the more you know about movies, the more it's like you learn to enjoy the good stuff in a movie and forgive the bad stuff in a movie. There's a lot of stuff out there that's really good, just has a couple of fatal flaws, but if you can look past it.
I think both you and me have at least one film that we've made that is a good, solid movie that will stand the test of some time.
Yeah, maybe.
In 5-10 years, maybe people still could stick it on and enjoy it. But something I love about horror is it only gets better with age.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about that as why that is, because I rewatched Frankenstein, James Whale's Frankenstein from 1931, thinking this movie is 90 years old, and it's just gotten scarier with age. And it's not scary in the way that like The Conjuring is scary. It doesn't make you jump, but like it's like black and white and grainy, and it's got this vibe about it, and you're like, ugh. Like it's old. And there's something about being so disconnected from time and this relic from like another era that I think makes it feel scary. So you're right, horror movies, they're like wine.
Exactly. That is what I think. And I think as long as a filmmaker you put enough care and attention to detail into the story and the cinematography, whether people know it's there or not, it's there. You know if it's there.
Yeah.
If you put it there, it's there. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think you and me, we make films with care.
Yeah. Well, and I think hopefully that's what's going to make us last and make many more movies for many more years to come. Rich and successful. Doubt it.
and on that note, that is the end of the podcast.
Right on.
Thanks for coming on, Aaron.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun.
As always, thanks so much for listening to the podcast. As I said in the interview, I really recommend picking up some of Aaron's movies if you're interested in giving them a watch. You can find them all on Amazon. And as for Death Ranch, it's coming to the USA and the UK in spring-summertime 2021. And I really can't wait for people to see what we got up to in Tennessee. I'm so proud of the work everyone put into the movie, and the response we've had so far from festivals, and our Grimfest world premiere has been really exciting, so look out for Death Ranch when it's released. I'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks. I'll see you then.